Hey, welcome to Geeky Guys Show Pod. We're back with another episode with Mr. Jethro and Mr. P and me. And we're talking about the hit comedy TV series Red Dwarf this time. Feelings, thoughts, gentlemen?
It's another one of those shows that's been going for a long, long time.
Yes.
Still going. The thing to point out about this, though, Dave, is that although you're our expert on Red Dwarf, I've seen a lot of it. I've seen all of it, but I maybe not remember it as much as you do. But Mr. Jethro's not really seen it.
No.
So this
I do, at the very least, know it exists.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is your intro into it. So I think pretty much the way this is going to go is that I'm going to quiz Mr. Dave and get all the knowledge about Red Dwarf at the same time.
And I'll ask stupid questions.
You can ask stupid questions.
Yeah,
it's pretty much the way it normally goes. And then I'll and then we'll introduce you to this world of Red Dwarf. Now,
Right.
there's two things just to point out at the beginning. So Red Dwarf was a very low budget sort of comedy space show, like Dave said. Okay. Very character driven. Okay.
Another point to mention there as well, which will kind of feed into what we tell him later, is it started off as a radio play. A few episodes on radio, basically, initially. Books were written later as the TV series was coming together. But that kind of gives you an idea of like how it began from early on and how the platform was put together, how the characters work with each other.
So why did they change from radio to TV?
It basically came from they always wanted it to be a TV show, but the two creators, Doug Naylor and Rob Grant, at the time were two students. They hadn't got the network to get in there. They hadn't got the knowledge of who to speak to, and it was easier at the time to try it on radio first. And they made a few changes to the characters, a few changes to the format while they were doing that, and then basically they shopped the series around to different producers, to different like the BBC, ITV, and tried to get somebody to bite basically on taking the series. So there were two students that had not had any work in the business before, so it was like getting somebody to take a risk on them basically.
Right, so what is Red Dwarf?
It's its base level, it's a sitcom in space. So where you would normally have a group of people in a house together, different personalities reacting with each other.
Right.
It's kind of taking that and putting it on a spaceship in space. Set 3 million years away from Earth. We'll come back to why that's the case
In the future?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's basically these group of characters working together, and it's not like on a usual sitcom where you can just walk into another room or go upstairs or whatever. They're basically stuck together, so they've got to learn to live together and work together. They've got basically no other choice.
And now a word about our sponsor. Are you looking to take your business or idea online? Then Namespace has you covered. From personal websites, e-commerce and fully managed IT services, see what Namespace can do for you today at namespace.rocks. Despite being in space, there's a lot of space in it, but it's not the main focus of this show.
Yeah.
They just happen to be in space. Okay? Everything they do, you could put them in an underwater base. You could put them in a big warehouse where they're locked in for years on end, because the scripts are it's very character driven, like I said.
Yeah.
So it's about going with these characters on this journey of being stuck together, and a lot of it is the close quarters of them being stuck together, and that's where a lot of the comedy comes from.
Yeah. So if we tell you, I think it'd be a good point now to kind of explain a bit of a plot, a bit of synopsis of the series. So the series starts Obviously there's the ship, but instead of just being the few characters together at the start, it's like a ship with a full complement. It's like
It's a
the
mining
Enterprise.
ship, large
Yeah.
mining
Right.
ship.
Okay. Mining ship.
Okay.
Okay.
Large mining ship, yeah. A ship
Part of a
that's-
bigger corporation,
Yeah, Jupiter
Yeah.
Mining
Jupiter
Corporation. Yeah.
and it's important. It's important to know that the characters that we're looking at, our main characters, are not high up on the hierarchy on this ship. That's a
No.
big point of this.
They're kind of the
sitcom.
lower decks people.
They're
aren't
lower
they?
decks. They're
Yeah.
the vending machine people that clean it out and service the vending machines, quite literally.
Yeah.
They're low-level technicians. And so, well, you can go
Yeah.
through the disaster.
It basically focuses at the beginning on these two characters, Arnold Rimmer and Dave Lister, and they don't get on at all. Arnold Rimmer's kind of the one that is kind of a bit aloof, and he wants to become an officer, basically an officer or an admiral, whereas Dave Lister's more like, I just want to hang out with my friends, do the job I've got to do, but not take things too seriously.
If anything, Dave, he wants to put as little effort in
Yeah.
as possible to
Pretty
get
much.
through the day.
Yeah.
Arnold Rimmer, played fantastically by Chris Barry from things like British Empire and stuff. He is the square. He's
Yeah.
stickler for the rules. He will walk around with a clipboard. You know, he's a kiss bottom to try and get up the ranks if he can.
Yeah.
But when you really boil it down, he's really got no ability to go
No,
up the
So,
ranks.
so is that sort of buddy cop, sort well, not buddy cop, but that sort of like odd pairing,
Odd couple.
that you
Yeah.
They
a little
wouldn't
together.
choose
Yeah.
to be together. They're thrown together.
yeah.
Yeah. So kind of you've got those kind of diametrically opposed people that are kind of together, but at the beginning they've kind of got the rest of the crew, and there's kind of a love interest for Dave List who he's chasing after that's a bit out of his league, but he still thinks he can get there. And they get to this point, and it's quite early on, where Lister's bought an unquarantined animal on board. He's bought this cat on one of the moons of Saturn called Titan, where there's like an outpost. He's bought it on the ship, and he's been hiding it in the in like the air vents and things around the quarters. And he gets found out because he's took a photo of him with the cat, and obviously it's been processed in like the labs on the ship. So he gets
This is
called
the intelligence level
Yeah.
we're dealing with here.
yeah. So he gets called to the captain's office, gets in trouble, and instead of being like there are other fines he could have, he could be like fined so much of his wages, or he could be sent out doing maintenance work on the ship, like painting the ship and things like that. But he'd get, because of the crime and because of how dangerous it could be to the rest of the crew if it's got a disease that they didn't know about, or if it starts nibbling through cables and damages the ship, they could be in a lot of trouble. So he puts him into suspended animation. So they've got like these stasis booths where basically they can go in there, they miss 9 months' pay, but they don't really, it's not like as bad as prison where you'd have to deal with living through those 9 months in prison. When he comes out of there, he feels like he's only just gone in.
Right. Okay.
But during the time that he's in stasis, there's an accident where a drive plate is not repaired correctly.
Who didn't repair it correctly?
Yeah, and it's a bit of contention later on in the series, but at the time it's kind of put on like this Arnold Rimmer as like not done it correctly, and has caused this massive feedback loop and caused a big cadmium radiation leak. So this radiation leak basically gets out of control and like kills the rest of the crew on the ship.
Oops.
So yeah, oops indeedy.
Also, because he's only supposed to be in there for so long, there's no one to get him out.
Oh, hence the
Hence the-
however many
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So the only person then running the ship is the computer. So it's basically a big ship the size of a city, a computer, and basically it picks up after the disaster, and he's basically come out of stasis, thinks that it's like 9 months later, and he finds out that basically the computer tells him there's been an accident, there's been an issue, and he finds out that he's been left in there until the background radiation has got to a safe level, basically for him to walk about on the ship and exist. And it turns out that that's like 3 million years. So basically, the ship's been travelling into space on its own, just with a computer, no crew, him in stasis. So now he's stuck in deep space, 3 million years away from Earth. And as the series carries on, how it basically sets it up, how it goes forward, the computer, Holly, brings back Arnold Rimmer, and his basis for that is he's like, because he annoyed him that much, and because they kind of had that previous relationship before the accident, he kind of sees him as the best person to keep him sane.
Right, so brings him back.
As a hologram.
As a hologram, sorry.
Oh, so he's not real, hasn't
Yeah.
like okay.
Yeah, see, the
So
basic...
is he the only real like human around in this ship? That
Is Lister.
Yeah.
Lister.
Right. Oh.
Also, I just want to point out as well that the cat, which he brought on board, has survived in the hold and has now developed into a life form from that original cat. We find out later that there's been generations of cats,
Yeah.
and this is the latest one, 3 million years later, that's evolved and developed as these cats have grown and evolved.
Yeah, the old Philo sapiens.
Yeah. So you've got Danny john-jules playing Cat.
Yeah.
And in series 2, we'll get another cast member that stays for the rest of the show, which is Crichton.
Well, not quite. The original Crichton who comes in is played by David Ross.
Yeah, the character of Crichton, though.
Oh, the character of Crichton
character
carries
comes
on,
in.
yeah, but played by a different actor. So yeah, obviously David Ross does that initially, and then when they came to return to the character, they couldn't get him back. So then Robert Llewellyn took over that character for the rest of the show.
I prefer his Crichton,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
I think. Maybe it's because we're just used to it. But either way.
yeah, maybe.
So you end up with this lineup for the most part of Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
Of Lister, Rimmer, Cat, Crichton, and then Holly.
Yeah.
A variation of, because there's 2 Hollies.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, the early part of the show, because of the budgetary constraints, is just set on board the ship, isn't it? Pretty much, and the stuff that goes on the ship. I mean, they have things where they like pick up like probes and bring them in and look at them, and they have different like weird anomalies and things that go on, but they're all related with just the ship.
Yeah.
And then later on, as the budget's better, they do go out and visit other planets.
And we get
other
more
moons
of
and
the
other
ship.
ships. Yeah.
And we get Starbug, and we get it's a bit like a smaller shuttle type ship.
So they have like the blue and white midget, just like the moon hoppers initially, and then they bring in a regular shuttle called Starbug, don't they, that they use for the rest of the show after the second series, to go out and do
It's more like a mini ship. It's more like a
The away mission shuttlecraft.
It's more like an ultimate runabout.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bigger. It's like a mini Defiant, if you like.
So somewhere between the Defiant and Runabout.
Yeah. So it's a ship in its own right, but it can dock into the larger, big, massive ship.
And the thing that you'll probably like about this, which I think is a good thing to mention now, is it's one of the rare sci-fi shows set in space that doesn't have any aliens.
Right, okay.
So, like, at the beginning, like, Rimmer's always obsessed with aliens and finding other life. And Doug Naylor and Rob Grant said at the start that it wasn't going to have any aliens in it. So all the ones the things that they have, the creatures and things that come in are, like, human-made. So they're, like, future human technology or future human, like, genetic engineering and things like that. So they use that kind of method rather than like encountering different alien species like they would in Star Trek.
Why did they make that decision?
I'm not too sure. I think it's because they wanted to do something different. Initially, it was probably budgetary reasons.
I would say when you look at it, the budget was so small that when you look at the original Star Trek, and even Doctor Who had been around for a while. I mean, this was came out 88.
88, yeah.
So this was all the Tom Baker era of Doctor Who had preceded it anyway. So they were using, and on a low budget, they were using like bits of Velcro and bubble wrap to make aliens. If you want to make a show that, not that's better, that's not the right word. It's sometimes better to say, look, let's just leave all that behind if we can't do it right and focus on what we can do right.
Right, okay.
And I think that's probably how the conversation went.
But in terms of like story-wise, obviously you need to justify story-wise. Why do they inevitably choose that, not just for a production or a standouty way?
Don't know. But I mean, in reality-wise, we've had this conversation in shows before where we've talked about aliens and space and so on, and whether there's a life out there in the universe.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I suppose, in the vastness of space, even if there was other life coming into contact with it, even if you had one ship going one direction, is so infinitesimally small that you're going to actually, come into contact with anything. It makes sense, and from a grounded point of view, to have no aliens in it.
But from the sounds of it, it's not the sort of thing to be grounded.
It's not, but again, I don't know. The focus of the show is these people interacting and having to get on and solve problems. But it's got to be problems they can solve. If it's aliens, they probably won't be able to solve them. Whereas if it's a computer or something that's grounded in something that they already know, that gives them an in, I guess.
I suppose that's the other thing as well, with it, like we said earlier at the beginning, with neither of them being qualified, none of them being officers. If they came up against something really, really bad and serious, they'd be dead, wouldn't they?
I mean, they do come up against serious things, but there's always a gimmick or a something that they can.
Yeah, I mean, to give you like an indication of some of the things, like in the early series, the way they got around the fact of the low budget is they'd have an episode like Future Echoes, and the idea with that is that Holly the computer, obviously when Lister comes back, he's like, right, turn the ship round, go back to Earth, and they can only travel at the speed of light or just under. And the computer is like, I've not travelled at the speed of light before. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, because the computer is kind of not as intelligent as computers in other sci-fi. So he's not designed to have all these roles to control the ship and look after it all.
They kind of play on that in episodes as well. Yeah. Holly is a really complex computer and keeps the ship running. But the interface used does make it seem like the computer's not that intelligent, even though it does keep the ship running. But it has got limits, and it's been running for 3 million years, keeping the ship running. And it's kind of got to the point where the computer's kind of gone a little bit mad.
Yeah, it spent all that time on his own, and it's kind of gone a bit mad. So there's that aspect of it as well, which is brought into the episode. And one of the things he states is like, I've only got an IQ of 6,000. That's only like 6,000 PE teachers. It's quite funny. But yeah, going back to the basic setup in the episodes, the Future Echoes one, as they're getting towards the speed of light, like reality is like bending and the future is actually coming closer towards them the quicker they go. And so they start like seeing things from the future. So like they'll see a conversation that they've not had yet.
Wait, isn't that just like going through time? Like you wait long enough and you're in the future?
A little bit, yeah. So it's kind of like a different way of looking at time travel. So there's like Rimmer will come in and say something and it makes like absolutely no sense. There'll be some like accident and then like a minute later it seems like the accident hasn't happened. So they've got that all going on and they've kind of got to work out what's going on, speak to Holly about it. There's not much help and they have to work it out themselves. So that's one aspect of the type of thing that they did. They did another one where they was experimenting on a machine that was supposed to to help with the food supplies. They built this machine to like duplicate the food. But it kind of went a bit wrong and it duplicated it, and one was like a really, really good version of it, and one was a really, really bad. And they have an accident with the machine where it actually fires onto the ship and actually creates two ships. So they have like a really good, like amazing, everything runs perfectly Red Dwarf, and then like another really run down like one like filled with like their alternate versions. They were like horrendous and things, and like they have to try and sort out and get the parts together to put the ship back together into one again rather than two.
There are all these fun stories though that use the same set, same people, which is where your low budget comes in, and it kind of works, doesn't it?
So it's like a full series of bottle episodes.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There's not a lot of continuity or long story arcs. These are short little dips into what's happening on board. And when I say short, they're not long episodes either.
Only like 30 minutes, aren't they?
Yeah, they're in between sort of 24 to 30 minutes episodes, which is really nice because if you've never watched it before, you can put it on and watch a few, and you don't feel like, if you don't like it, you don't feel like you've wasted a long time. But if you do like it, it's great because you can get through the episodes and crack on and watch all these really fun stories. And to be honest, there's not really any bad stories, is there, really, from Red Dwarf?
No, not really.
As the later series came in, some were a little bit, all right.
Not quite so good. I mean, they did a really, one of the classic episodes is called Polymorph, where they get this like almost like waste, just like genetic engineering, like waste pod is like floating in space, and it's something that I think it's human military from like 24th, 25th century or something. And so they think, oh, there might be some like tech in this that we can use. So they bring it in, and this thing escapes from it, almost like a alien like face grabber thing, like escapes from it. And this creature is like a genetic mutant, and that was created by the military that can change itself into different things to suit its environment, like a shapeshifter. So basically, this thing is loose on the ship, and like keeps interacting with them, but obviously like they've no idea what it is because it keeps changing form into different things. So one minute it's a beach ball, next minute it's like a bedroom lamp, next minute it's like a sausage or something, and then when it gets near its prey, it like shoots a sucker thing out, and it takes it like it eats emotions. And so the idea of it is it like decapitates the prey by taking away what makes them them. So you've got like Lister loses his sense of like fear, and like Rimmer loses like all his snidiness and everything. He just becomes like super nice. And
this is supposed to be a comedy, not a horror.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny because of what happens to them. Because you change their characters in a way that's just funny.
Okay.
It's not done in a terribly serious way.
It just sounds, from the way you said it, that's like, oh, that sounds absolutely awful.
Yeah, but it's it's not as in, they never go kind of dark, gritty horror style and stuff. It's always quite light and not taken too serious.
As opposed
even
to
when they
that,
do go a little bit darker, it's always got that slapstick element to it.
Yeah.
Which is always quite fun. The initial run was very successful.
Yeah.
And then there was there was a few production issues. Now, we're not going to go into these in great detail, but a few things in the background. So Rob Grant and Doug Naylor stopped writing together. The show did come back with just Rob Grant?
Just with Doug Naylor.
Just Doug Naylor, sorry.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one. Just with Doug Naylor helming it, who's still doing it now. And they did what they did when they brought it back, if I'm right, Dave. They did more often. They did specials.
Well,
there was a break, then they came back and did a few more, but then they did specials.
They did 6 series in the first initial run.
Yeah.
With the same core cast. Most of the time, same director, Ed Bye, directed a lot of the episodes. He directed a lot of Men Behaving Badly. Rob Grant, as you said, he stepped away from it. They had some issues. I think that was around towards the end of series 3.
It was the 90s. Because Chris Barry had also moved away because he was doing the British Empire, which I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So they did
They did manage to get Chris Barry back.
Yeah.
To carry on with the series.
And there was an episode where they wrote him out for a little bit as well and brought him back, which was...
There's only Danny John-Jules and Craig Charles was in every episode.
They've been in all the way, yeah. Yeah, so they did the 6 series in the initial run. Then they came back and they did a full 7th series with the same cast again. And then they did an 8th series and they brought back... Lister's love interest from this first series, but played by a different actress. And so she was in it for series 8, that they got from, like, she came back into it because of a parallel universe where she'd survived. And so she comes back into it with the rest of them. And then they had a break, and they didn't do a series 9. They then did a series of specials, which I think is what you're thinking of. They did Back to Earth, which is the the one where they have the story where they kind of interacted with the real world and they went to the Coronation Street, didn't they? Which they kind of could do quite easily because Craig Charles had like starred on Coronation Street as well.
They did a bit of a crossover, I think.
So they did a bit of a crossover there with that, where they go there.
It was a bit...
Yeah.
So like Dimensions in Time with Doctor Who and EastEnders.
Yeah, a bit like that, I suppose.
So they did that, and then they did Series X. So they missed out 9, they did X, and then they did a Series 11 and 12, which was back to the core cast again, and probably was, like we were saying earlier, it was one of those that was like a bit of a return to form. Kind of 7 wasn't taken that well, 8 had its like moments but wasn't great. The Back to Earth thing didn't really take off compared to the quality of the others, and then 11 and 12 they kind of got back to what made the show good before and just kept that core cast together, and that worked really well. And then they did a series of specials called The Promised Land, which we went to see filmed at Pinewood Studios, didn't we?
We did. Watched one of the episodes, yeah.
What's
cool about that, actually, just to interject, when we went to watch that, they did show us the bits they'd filmed.
Yeah.
So we watched the first bit, because was it part 2 we were watching?
Part 2, I think.
So they showed us part 1, even though it hadn't been released yet, just so we knew what had happened, so that we could then watch part 2 being recorded, which I thought was a really nice way of doing it.
So you had a private screening.
Yeah, basically.
They had the basic effects on there as well, didn't they? As Doug Naylor was saying, don't worry about the crappy effects, we're going to change that.
This is before post-production had been finished on the first part.
So that was a really good way for us to kind of see behind the scenes and see how it was all done.
And just to interject once more, if anyone wants to know more about that, we did a Tea Break podcast where we talked about Red Dwarf. You can find that on our old Tea Break podcast.
We got it on the archive somewhere, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. So you've been down this road before, have you?
This
isn't your first rodeo.
It was a weird one, though. We will point out it was a weird one because production-wise of those series, when we did our tea breaks, were a little bit out of order. So we did do a tea break about Red Dwarf. And we did talk about the visit and stuff, and it was a bit out of order. But
I don't remember us going into this much detail. I don't think we did on that one. But yeah, obviously we went to Pinewood and saw them film it, which was really cool to see how it all came together and how they did certain things. So that was really cool. And we've met some of the cast as well, didn't we? So we had a group photo, didn't we, both of us, with Danny john-jules, Chris Barry, Norman Lovett and Hattie Hayridge, who played the other Holly, who came in later.
So both 2 Hollies.
Rimmer,
Cat.
And that was it on that one, wasn't it? And then we met Robert Llewellyn on his own,
yes,
as a con.
And then you've met Craig
I've
Charles.
met Doug Naylor on his own at a con, Charles. And then me and you both went to Manchester, and I met Craig Charles.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got to meet all of them, which was really nice, and got some photos. And the last time I spoke to Doug Naylor when I saw him at the con, he did say that they were hoping to do some more and get back to the studio and sort the rights issues out.
Which they are.
Which it sounds like they have. Obviously, we broke the news on Geeky Guys, didn't we, a few weeks back when they said that they were starting filming, I think in September this year or something, and then it'd be out next year. So that would be good, 3 new episodes to watch.
So it's been going on for...
Since 1988.
1988.
So how long's that? 30... quick maths. 36 years.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
So,
yeah, because they had the 35th anniversary, didn't they, last year?
So yeah, 36 years, and they're still making it. So it's definitely got legs, hasn't it?
Definitely. It's a format that works.
Especially with the same cast. It's not like a reboot with a different cast or a different setting. But the same cast, going in again and again, every now and then, just to do a handful of episodes.
The beauty about doing a show that is character-driven is you get invested in the characters. And people always want to see what's happening with them. And I don't think, there was an odd exception, but for the most part, they've never done it just for the sake of doing it. It's always been a kind of fun, well, where are they now? And that's nice.
Yeah, put them in different situations, give them different challenges and see how they deal with it.
And because it's a comedy, you can do more with it, a little bit. That perhaps you couldn't do with a more serious franchise like Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
You can have comedy moments in it. But because this is just a comedy, you can actually take you can get someone to sort of what's the phrase? suspend your belief. Not what. What's the phrase?
Similitude.
No. You know, when you kind of look at them, oh well, that would never happen, but you accept it because that's what's happened. You can take that to a whole new level with a comedy.
Yeah.
Because you can have something just for comic effect. So you can have them pull out a device that's a scanner and it just looks stupid and clunky and don't really work properly.
What you say about the cheapness of the production, like with the set design?
Suspend your disbelief. That's what I meant.
You can suspend your disbelief,
and
but
this
also
takes it to a whole new level because it's a comedy and you get away with it because you know they're doing it for the gag, but you go along with it because it's funny.
But also, if the production level is a bit like cheap, comedy is a bit more forgiving of cheapness. Wouldn't you say?
You never really look at those sets and think, this is a cheap show. Not really.
No, you don't really notice.
They don't have lots of them, which is why they've only got one corridor, a couple of rooms or whatever, and they never really get away from that, to be fair.
No, not a lot.
But because it's about the characters, keep drilling this in.
And they don't take it too seriously as well. I mean, there's a moment in one of the end of the first series where on the Me Too episode where they bring in a Rimmer fixes it, so he tricks Lister and they bring in an additional Rimmer hologram, so he has two to deal with, and they decide to change the colour of on the walls in the corridors, and they change it from ocean grey to military grey just to spruce it up a bit, and there's like hardly any difference, like Lister can't notice. So they did little things like that, and they always talk about like all the props that didn't work, and they like have moments in scenes where they mention about it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or like the power packs don't work properly and they have to get something else and jerry rig it to get it to work. So there was always those kind of things where they didn't take it so seriously.
They're working on a ship though, in their world where it's 3 million years with no one looking after it. Yeah. Well, I say that there is scutters. So scutters are about the size of K9 here, little. That run around and do the job. They're little robots that run around and help maintain and do stuff when the humans can't. And in the beginning, when it's all working fine, the scutters would assist and do the jobs that the humans didn't want to do. Yeah.
But then the scutters like Holly have gone a bit mad as well.
Yeah.
And they've been there a long time. Their circuits are getting old.
Yeah.
So there's like the moments where like they rewire things. Like there's a really funny episode where they rewire part of the ship, and they end up where some of the electrical systems are now connected to the self-destruct. So there's a moment where Lister goes to the vending machine and orders like a milkshake and a toffee crisp or something. And it just flashes up on the screen, auto-destruct initiated. Like the ship will shut down and expire in like 3 minutes and counting. Like, what? And eventually they manage to sort it out. But there's little things like that where it's like the systems don't work rightly and the computer or the scutters are seen on and have done like ridiculous, stupid things that's put them in danger.
I think my favourite piece of tech is there's a toaster that talks to everybody. But
toaster with the AI.
Yeah, because he's just a toaster. All he does is toast bread. So all he wants to do all the time is toast bread. So whenever anyone's near him, he's like, hey, fancy some toast? It's like, no, don't any toast. Come on, how about a nice slice of toast? And that's what
he starts offering them other things as well, like waffles and bagels and flapjacks and all sorts. And eventually they destroy it, don't they, and chuck it in the waste disposal. Then bring it back later. And the toaster was actually voiced by David Ross, who played Crichton in the second series. They got him back, but not to play Crichton, but they got him back to do Talkie Toaster.
That's brilliant.
That was quite funny. But talking about different cast, it just flagged me up to mention this to you as well. In 92, I think it was, they decided to do an American pilot to try and sell Red Dwarf overseas. And
did it work?
No. They did have a different cast. I think the only person who carried on was Robert Llewellyn.
It was.
As Crichton. So he carried on, but completely different cast. It was very Americanised. The humour didn't really work. It was a bit jarring, and it really didn't work. And so that kind of was the last time that they attempted that, and they've never done that since. They've kind of just said, it's going to be too difficult to recast it and get it to work in another country, and so they've just basically sold the show as is in Britain around the world, and that seemed to work for them, like with Doctor Who.
Why you don't do that in the first place, I've no idea. But
yeah,
they did it as a pilot, but ended up.
I mean, you speak the same language.
Yeah,
it's not as if you're going to have to like retranslate it, or like with Mad Max and just redub it. Well, it's like, well,
There's a whole thing about US and UK comedy, in that one doesn't translate to the other, and you see it all the time. It shows not just comedy, but like Shameless, they'll redo it with American people. The Office, they redid it with American people, and in the case of those two examples, they're the two I used because they worked.
how many didn't work?
But the first episode of Shameless is just word for word, pretty much what the UK one was. The only thing they've changed is a few terms they've just changed to American, and they've put it in an American setting. That's it.
Yeah, they dropped
And
the
it
U
took
from
off.
colour and...
It just took off.
Yeah.
Well, I just give them the UK one then. It's the
Exactly.
same one.
I mean, the crazy thing was back when they first started casting for the show, Red Dwarf, there was a lot of big actors were actually interested in being in the show. They looked at like Alan Rickman, Bill Nye, and James Belushi for Lister. They looked at Little Richie and like Prince for the cat. And there's probably a few others. I can't remember who read for Rimmer, but there was quite a few big names that like read the script and were interested and wanted to do it. So, you know, obviously I had that wide appeal, and people could obviously see that there was something there for it to be a hit.
Yeah. It's got legs.
Speaking of legs, it's time that we use our legs and walk over to our quizzing area, because
The quiz room.
it's time where me and Dave put our brains together, or against each other in fact, as Mr. Jethro prepares some questions for us, and we try to see who's got the geekiest brain.
Let's see what he's got for us this
Yeah,
time.
Let's go to the geeky quiz.
Once more to the breach, dear friends.
Henry
Yes.
V, Act 3, Scene 1.
Bro, if that was
Correct.
a question, you would have got that right.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, it is not a question,
No.
so you do not get a point for that.
No.
Oh dear, never mind.
But here is the first question. What was the name of the ship in 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Oh, that's a good question. Dave?
Let's go for the obvious Odyssey.
No. The answer is Discovery 1.
That does ring a bell now.
Question number 2. What's it like to hold the hand of someone you love interlinked?
Interlinked.
Correct.
You know, for a long, long time, you guys would say that, and I had not a clue what you were talking about.
Yeah, very true. What were they on about? What's all this?
Question number 3. What is the max speed of Thunderbird 1? Closest wins.
Thunderbird 1.
Yeah.
10,000 miles an hour.
That's your guess. What's your guess?
10,000 miles? It's not going to be 10,000 miles an hour. If it is now, I'm going to be really annoyed. I'm going to just go way less. Because it's closest, I'm just going to say 1,000 miles an hour, because I reckon it's in hundreds.
It is 15,000 miles an hour.
Jeez, really?
Yes.
Ooh.
Which, for those at home, that is Mach 19.7.
Mach 19 points, really? It's flying on a string. It's never going that fast. I can see the string.
Question number 4. Which city was destroyed by an asteroid in Starship Troopers?
I'm just going to pick a big city. Los Angeles.
No.
San Francisco.
Incorrect. I give you a clue. It's not in the US. I know, shocker.
London.
No.
Oh.
Johannesburg.
Incorrect. Do you give up?
Go on then, tell us.
Buenos Aires. Question number 5. What is the name of the ship in Alien?
Nostradamus.
Incorrect.
No, it's
I have no idea. So if you've got another guess, go for it, because I just don't know.
Nostradamus.
No.
Go on, tell us.
Nostromo.
Nostromo. I knew it was something like
You were
that.
so close. I wouldn't
Yeah.
know that at all. No idea.
When was the Predator film called Prey set?
Well, I don't know, because I've not seen it. Again, that franchise is a little bit of a blind spot for me. So I'm going to guess it's going to be something silly. It's going to be something futuristic sounding, like 2067.
You say 2067,
Yeah.
okay.
1870.
1870. It is 1790. So Mr. Dave gets that
I
one.
didn't realise it'd gone back.
Question number 7. When was Judgment Day according to Terminator Genesis?
Jethro's smiling because he knows. I've watched these recently. But he also knows that when you binge watch lots of stuff all at once, you forget details. And I know roughly, but I don't really want to talk too much out loud because Dave will get the answer. I'm going to go 1997.
97, okay.
2006.
It's 2017.
Of course it is, because it changed.
Question number 8. What's the name of the sequel to Westworld?
There's a sequel.
There is, yeah. That was my reaction as well.
I've no idea. Eastworld.
No.
You never know. Don't know.
Wild Wild West.
Nope.
Pass.
Alright, Future World.
Oh.
Question number 9. Which series has the following plot? The moon is thrown out of Earth's orbit into deep space, and the crew of Moonbase 1 must fight to survive.
Only Moonbase 1 is vaguely familiar. Not the plot, but the name of the place is vaguely familiar.
Blake 7.
No.
I know where you're going with that because I'm going through Lost in Space and I'm thinking about all
thinking
those old
on those
shows.
lines,
It's got to be
maybe.
an old one.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to pass.
Space 1999.
I knew it was one of those.
Yeah, it was something like that.
And question number 10. Who played the character Tron in Tron?
I'll chuck an answer in. Peter Cullen.
No.
You can see why I said that, but I've no idea. I don't know.
Gary Sinise.
No.
Yeah, I'll have to pass, I think.
So, Bruce Boxleitner.
Oh. Wouldn't have got that.
No, I don't think I would have done.
Okay, that means Mr. Dave has 4, Mr. P 0.
Really? Hang on, have I just not got any questions right at all?
Not this round.
Blimey, that's a
Good grief.
crazy one, isn't it?
That's going to be the first time that I've not got any questions. Anyone has got no questions.
Is that because I didn't put a Star Trek question in?
That might be something to do with it. A little bit.
Just thought I'd spice it up a bit and not have a Star Trek question in the one of the
Damn, he's found my Achilles heel.
Now we're in trouble.
You wait next time. Next
time, Mr. Dave. Next time.
Yeah. Let's just talk about the sort of the science a little bit.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, because there's a few episodes where they do talk about science and they come up with a storyline based around a scientific principle. Gee, where have we seen a sci-fi show that's done that before?
Yeah, sounds familiar.
And although they do take a very,
creative license
with it, yeah. You always get the impression that they've done the due diligence in the first place.
They try and make it close, don't
Yeah.
they? They try and make it kind of feasible.
There are some fun episodes as well where they basically took this idea and thought, well, how would that work as an episode? So there's one which Dave will elaborate on in a minute, which is where everything's backwards.
Yeah.
So literally, they will just do everything in reverse. But obviously, when our guys get there, they're doing everything the correct way. So, for example, in is it backwards world or whatever it is?
Yeah, they go through.
People will walk in reverse, but then they'll speak in reverse too, and it sounds like it's gobbledygook because they're speaking backwards.
Yeah.
But that's just the way that place works.
Initially, that's what they think, don't they? When they land, they think that they're back on Earth in like a foreign country, don't they? At first. And then they notice, like you say, with the people walking and cycling backwards, they realise that the words are backwards to what they should be.
Oh, so now we know where Christopher Nolan got his idea for Tenet from.
It's from Red Dwarf. Everything's from Red Dwarf. That's a fun idea.
It's an interesting concept, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's because the whole world is like backward. They give the example of like Santa's like an awful person who like breaks in and nicks all the kids' toys. And like the robbers are people that just come round and like give you loads of random stuff.
Yeah.
And robbers come round and suck bullets out of you and things. So they expand on like all the things that are awful in this world that in that world are actually not that bad.
So, let's say something like Futurama, where the writers are have often been cited as being the most overqualified writing team in all of history, with many of them having like PhDs in different scientific fields, and a lot of it reflects in the comedy as well.
Yeah.
Is that the sort of thing that you talk about with Red Dwarf, that there is an actual understanding of the scientific principles on the part of the people who are making it, and they're trying to incorporate that into the comedy side?
I think there is
an
some
element
of
of
that. Yeah, they did. I mean, there is like in Star Trek, there is the like gobbledygook speeches sometimes that like Crichton would do, or
Crichton normally comes out with the science stuff because he's the mechanoid, so he's like got all this knowledge in his head anyway. Even though he's only which was the comedy twist of this, is that Crichton is actually a domestic droid.
Yeah.
So he does ironing, cleaning, cooking, that
but
kind
he's
of thing.
then like been promoted to science officer.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, he's still a mechanoid and he's got all this brain power that he can keep all this knowledge in, which is interesting from a social point of view. It speaks to, classes, sex system, slavery and stuff like that, I suppose, on a lower level. But in a comedy, you get away with it, don't you? I just want Dave to talk to us a bit about an episode, because it's one of my favourites, is Queeg.
Right, yeah.
Because you've gone through the entire series 1 and up to this is episode 5 of series 2, and you've got Holly. Now, Holly, we said, was the computer was, gone a little bit awry, but still quite clever, runs the ship, but can't really do anything that technical or advanced, or so we think. And basically, Queeg 500, like a backup computer, ends up taking over when there's an incident, a meteorite or something damages the ship.
Yeah, and they basically say he's not up to the job, and
they're saying, Holly's not up to the job, you don't know what you're doing, So all of a sudden this Queeg 500 takes control, and instead of being Norman Lovett, who's a middle to sort of old age white guy with balding hair, you've got this big menacing black guy on the screen instead as the computer Queeg 500, and he drills Rimmer, and he does all these things that Holly would never do.
Yeah.
And you thought Holly could never do. And then Dave, at the end?
Yeah, so like Mr. P said, it basically pops up and like says he's took over the ship and Holly's gone, and making Rimmer and the cat work that's never happened before, and is like basically trying to make them run the ship as really they should do if there was somebody proper in charge.
Yeah.
And then at the end you realise it's all been a lesson, and like Queeg 500 is like fake, and it's something Holly's made up just to prove a point.
Yeah. He waits to the point where they're all like, no, we've got to get Holly back. We need to get this backup back. We need to get Holly back. And it was this sort of, just because you don't think I'm good at what I do, I am, and you take me for granted. And I thought that was a lovely episode.
Basically, I'm fantastic.
Just talking about Holly, what's really funny again is at the beginning of most episodes, there's a slight intro, and Holly voices the intro. So it'll be something along the lines, it sort of sets the show up. So it's like, after 3 million years in deep space, these are the only these are the only crew left. We've just spent the last 6 months going round in circles because someone broke the navigation system. But we have just found another pack of biscuits, so, And it's just silly stuff like that. That's made up, that's not one, but it's silly stuff like that that's quite funny.
Yeah, when I said one to you earlier, didn't I, where he comes on,
Kendall's
and, well, not that one, we can do that one in a
right.
minute, but he does another one where he's like, we've got enough food and supplies to last 30,000 years, enough food and water to last 30,000 years, although we have run out of individual sachets of mustard.
They're just really funny comedy moments.
And then the one you said where it was like, we flew around an asteroid last week that looked exactly like the shape of Felicity Kendall's bottom. We flew around that one a few times.
There's one of my favourites is one where he goes on about how dire the situation is. So it's like, we're stuck in deep space, 3 million years away from Earth. We've got dirt, and it lists off a load of things that's really bad. And then at the end he goes, still, got to laugh, ain't you?
Sounds very British.
It is very British and very fun, and it's just a fun, tongue-in-cheek sitcom in space, which it's just brilliant. You can see why it's
Yeah.
lasted so long. And the characters are so lovable. Even Rimmer, when he's being an absolute, ace,
Yeah.
you still love him.
Yeah.
Because that's just who he is. But at the end of the day, no matter how many... Oh, the Space Corps directives. Let's just talk
Yeah.
about the Space Corps directives. So, obviously, like Starfleet has their rules and, the charters and rules. They have the Space Corps directives in Red Dwarf. And it's the rules of how they're supposed to conduct themselves on
duty on a ship, basically. Yeah.
Now, Rimmer, of course, thinks he knows them all. Of course, he gets them wrong all the time. Crichton's a mechanoid, so he knows what they all are, and he's remembered them all. So every time Rimmer comes out with one, it's wrong.
He's like, I'd like to apply Space Corps Directive 306 to this situation.
And then Crichton will be like,
Really?
Really?
Space
Are you
Corps
sure?
Directive 306. And then it's
all,
something.
all people should queue up for the toilet on the left-hand side of the corridor. No, not that one.
306A. So yeah,
That's just funny.
it's because basically there's Rimmer's always like fed up of like they never do like what he wants them to do, and like they don't respect his authority, so he just keeps pulling out these Space Corps directives of like, because
them
of
all
this,
wrong.
that's why he's supposed to do it, but gets it wrong anyway.
Which is another funny moment. And I think what's great about it is no matter what happens in an episode, there's no like big story arcs. So even if one of them gets ahead, gets what they want, you always end up at the end of the episode, they're pretty much where they left off. So we always join them pretty much where we always join them.
So the reset button.
Kind of. Whatever happens, it always goes back to normal,
Right.
for the most part. I don't really think there's much character development, really. Not really. I think
really.
what happens is the actors get used to playing these roles.
Yeah.
So they become a lot more relaxed in their performances and they become a lot more polished. But they don't really... There's not really much development because they can't develop anywhere. If one of them if Rimmer, for example, becomes one technician higher, it would make an iota of difference because there's still only those 4 or 5 of them there.
Yeah, I mean, there's even an episode where he actually manages to wing it because of what somebody else does for him, and he becomes an officer on a ship, on the episode Hollis ship, and even with all that going for him, he still manages to bugger it up and end up back where he was.
Yeah.
So it's always that thing. They always like aspire to be higher, but they can never get there, and they always do things that stop them getting there. So they just carry on being space bums, basically.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they are literally just a bunch of mates who travel through the space, just surviving, essentially.
Yeah.
And solving whatever problems they come across. All at the same time trying to make things better for themselves and kind of not really managing to as they go along. There's a whole series or so where they lose the ship, right?
Yeah.
So they go in Starbug, which is like the shuttle, if you like, and then they end up, I forget how it happens, but they end up losing the ship. So Red Dwarf carries on, and then they've lost it. So they have to. They're now trying. They actually have a bit of an arc where they're trying to find Red Dwarf.
Yeah, it's to say they've forgotten where they've parked it and which planetoid it was next to, and so they end up, like you say, just that whole like series or so, just in Starbug, following the like almost like the
engine
warp
trail
trail,
or
like the
whatever,
vapor trail, to try and catch up with it.
Which they eventually do. They do get back to the ship, but that's just a fun. How do you make these guys more incompetent than they already are?
Yeah.
Or they lose the entire big ship. That would pretty much solve that one, wouldn't it?
And they have tried to develop the show in the past. They have tried to get a movie going a few times. Even got an agreement going in to film in Australia a few years back, and it didn't end up happening. They couldn't get it together.
Yes. Legion. That's a fun episode.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And this is all while they're on Starbug because it's Series 6.
Yeah, so it's where they have the technology, where they have the minds of the people that are present at the station. And the original idea was to bring all the world's best scientists together, and it basically puts their minds, their consciousness, into like one being. It's like one, but almost like an android, but it's kind of overlaid with like 5 or 6 people's knowledge and personalities. And the idea was that they could then come up with amazing technology and ideas. But obviously this station's been left defunct for years. Nobody's been there. And the Red Dwarf crew get there. And obviously it's about, he then wants to put their minds together, and obviously they don't want that to happen, and it just ends up being hilarious when they're trying to impress him and seeing that like he could be really useful to them on the ship and help them get home quicker, and like usual it doesn't work out quite as expected.
No. I think, to summarise, it's everything we've just said. Basically, it's a group of mates on a ship having these adventures. The writing is generally very good.
Yeah.
We just said there was an odd special there where it quality dips a little bit, but
Pretty much, for the most.
Generally, it's
What
very
else
good.
do you expect from a series that's gone on
and
for 30 plus years?
And what I love about this is they never really, despite the budget getting bigger and time moving on, decades on, you know, if we would go back and watch the new one being filmed, and when we watched the other one being filmed the other year at Pinewood, it's still a biggish rickety set. You know, they haven't got masses of space. They don't use lots of effects. The practical effects they do use are clearly low budget, because why wouldn't you? And I think as a decision to keep it in that style has helped the show.
Yeah.
I think if it, because one of those specials I remember seeing, the effects got a lot better, and it just made it worse.
Yeah, they added in some CGI effects, didn't they? And
just made it worse.
They even went back and added some CGI to the earlier episodes, and it was a bit jarring, so it didn't match up with the way the rest of the episode looked.
Yeah, we love it because it's not about the effects; it's about the characters, and
I mean, for the most part, I mean, I don't think they've really very often changed it. They've used practical effects. They've had like model miniature ships and like miniature planets and things to you know get those really good practical effects that you would have had in like early Star Trek and early Star Wars and stuff. And Red Dwarf have kind of carried on with that. And like we said, they've kind of had a bit of a play with CGI and tried it, but they've always gone back to the models because it always looks better.
And that's what we're used to. That's what we like, you know. You can't beat a practical effect.
No, I don't think so.
Even just on a slight segue, even looking at like TNG episodes from Star Trek, all the remastered and Blu-ray stuff now, you look at some of the close-up shots of the saucer bit of the Enterprise when it's going past, you can see where the gaffer tape is on it, or where the paint isn't quite painted right on one little bit, or whatever. I love that. Don't get rid of that. I love that. A testament to the people building these things, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, we are getting towards the end, Dave. So before we get there, let's give Mr. Jethro, I say let's, like it's me going to do it, I'm not going to do it. Let's give Mr. Jethro a few little bits of trivia.
Okay. Bit of trivia then. So I mentioned, half started mentioning this one to you earlier.
Yes.
When Red Dwarf started, it was just after the beginning of Star Trek The Next Generation. And Patrick Stewart was sat in a hotel room somewhere in North America after filming, and he was watching some kind of network that had British shows on it, and Red Dwarf came on. And when he first started watching it, he thought it was a cheap, nasty knockoff of The Next Generation, and he was really angry that it had been put into production. He thought that they were like poking fun at Star Trek, and he was going to sue them and everything. He says, and then I decided to watch it a few seconds more, and something made me laugh. And he said, I watched it another 10 minutes, and he said, and then I realised what they were doing, what they were going for, and then it was nothing about Star Trek and riding on our coattails. It was a completely different thing. It was just a funny sitcom in space. He says that, and I then loved it, and like loved it all the way through till now. So yeah, they nearly got sued by Sir Patrick Stewart in '88. The next bit of trivia, as I say, obviously they struggled to sell the show back in the day. Went to lots of different production companies, the BBC, ITV couldn't sell it, and eventually they got the script to Paul Jackson, who was a producer on The Young Ones and some of those early sitcoms in the late 70s, early 80s, and he really liked the script. And he went to the BBC, eventually got them to see the merit in it, but they weren't happy with the casting. They wanted somebody else to play Lister. They didn't like the Liverpool accent and wasn't sure he was the right person, and Doug Naylor really had to push to get them to agree to allow Craig Charles to play the part. So it took a lot of arguing back and forth, but eventually they managed to get him in the role. But it was very, very difficult for him to keep it. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else.
The only thing that I could add is that a lot of these actors, when they started on Red Dwarf, were pretty much new to acting.
Yeah.
So
But Danny John-Jules was a dancer. He'd not even done acting before, had he? And
so what you find is that I think one of the reasons we love these characters so much is even from the beginning, because they weren't that great at acting, they were just kind of being themselves. So what you found is these characters, to a certain degree, are very much like the actors who play them.
they've
Craig
even
Charles
said that
has
in
kind of
themselves
said, I'm
in
a bit
panels.
slobby anyway, you know. And it kind of comes through when you watch them in real life. They are, and I think that's why we like them so much.
Yeah, they're kind of definitely a lot of elements of their character is there in their own personality and who they are in real life, isn't it? The composer of the music is the same composer that did the music for Blackadder, Howard Goodall. So he did the original music and had the same music for first couple of series, and then they changed it to a more upbeat rock electrical kind of version of the theme for the third series onwards.
And just before we finish, something that they did very different to a lot of other shows. Well, we'll talk swearing, and then we'll talk bloopers. You can see where I'm going with this.
Swearing?
So, obviously being a family comedy show, BBC, there's no swearing. So, in order to get some kind of word in there to emphasise frustration, they used the word smeg.
Smeg?
Yeah.
Is that short for what I think it's short for?
I don't think so. I think they just picked it. So they would call one would call the other a smeghead or whatever, and then it would just smegin' hell, because you can get away with saying it and it's fine.
Or like a goit instead of a git.
Yeah, and that's fun. But also,
or they'd cheat and they'd say, "There's a thing that you are. The word hasn't been invented for it yet, but whatever it is, you're one of them and a total one at that."
Yeah. They've released some bloopers on DVDs and they're called smeg-ups.
Okay.
And you can actually buy the smeg-ups, which is essentially a full DVD full of bloopers from the series, which is hilariously funny to watch.
Funny.
That is quite funny.
Yeah.
So they did that as which a lot of other shows haven't done that. They'll put little bits out or they'll put extras on a DVD, but they've never just released this is a complete disc of all of our smeg-ups. And that was really cool to do and very different.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And very funny.
And after you've watched the show, you must go and watch the smeg-ups because that's just really funny.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So summarising, Dave, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So should I watch it?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, and you probably want to watch it from the start as well.
Definitely.
I think that's important for the character building and understanding the dynamics.
I'd be surprised, talking about it for an hour and should I watch it? I'd be like, nah.
Can't be bothered.
Wouldn't trouble yourself. It's probably not your cup of tea.
Yeah, and there's some new Red Dwarf coming out, so it's a good reason to watch the old stuff before that stuff comes out, isn't it?
And there is a lot of it, but you can get through it fairly quickly because, like I said,
short
the episodes.
So where is it? Where can we watch it?
It was on iPlayer for a while.
Still on BBC iPlayer. And series 7 to 12 is on UK TV Play.
Right. Okay.
I think that's just called W now, isn't it? But it's the channel that was UK TV Play.
Yeah, they rebranded, but the app is still there. It's free. It's still free if you're in the UK.
Oh, it's free. Yeah. Okay, good.
And iPlayer, of course, is free anyway. As long as you pay your TV license. But we'll skim over that because I've got interesting opinions about that.
Yes, let's save that for another episode.
And and we'll leave on a high and say Red Dwarf's awesome. You need to watch it, and if you don't watch it, you're a smeghead.
Yeah,
basically.
totally.
So. Thanks for watching. You can catch all what we're up to at geekyguys.co.uk and our associated social media channels. And we'll be back really soon.